Can we just skip the grandma scenes? They're too irrelevant. That's what my daughter-in-law said in front of everyone as she reached for the remote and paused the movie. The living room fell into a silence so loud I could hear my own heartbeat. My granddaughter's eyes flickered to me. My son shifted uncomfortably. The popcorn bowl remained untouched between us. If you've ever watched a woman get erased from her own family, not by a slap, but by silence, then you need to stay until the very end of this story. And if you've ever seen someone lose their place at the table they built with their own hands, comment your city below. Tell me where this happened to you, because I know I'm not the only one. And subscribe, if like me, you believe forgotten voices still deserve to be heard. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My tongue felt heavy. My mind heavier. The movie had been my idea, a quiet family night. Some laughter, a little bonding. I hadn't even picked it. My daughter-in-law had. She was the one who'd suggested we all watch Bridges in the Wind, an old drama I loved from my youth. A film about a matriarch trying to hold a family together through storms and decades. I was proud when it started a story where the mother, the grandmother, had a role beyond stirring soup or babysitting. But now, 28 minutes in, she had pressed pause right in the middle of a monologue I had memorized years ago. I just think it slows things down, she said, glancing at my son. We've seen this before, haven't we? He didn't reply. He was sipping his soda. My granddaughter looked at her lap. I waited for someone to speak, for someone to say, "Let's keep watching. Mum likes this part." But the moment passed, and the remote clicked forward. Scene skipped. My chair was the only one not touched by the glow of the TV anymore. I was sitting in the dark, literally and otherwise. And then came the laughter, not from the film, but from the room. A joke, unrelated, a funny bit from a side character. Everyone laughed, including my son. The scene went on, and I didn't. I sat still, not breathing, not blinking. You might wonder, why didn't I stand up? Why didn't I say something? But humiliation isn't loud. It's quiet. It sneaks up and wraps around you like a fog, until you can't see where your self-respect ended and their disrespect began. And this wasn't the first time. There had been small things before. Casual mentions of how I liked old stuff. A strange new label they'd been using for me lately. The archive. At first, I thought it was a joke. But lately, I'd seen it pop up on group chats. Archives calling again. Someone would write when I texted. They never said it in person, just in pixels, which somehow hurt more. Let me give you context. I raised that boy, my son, mostly alone after his father passed. I worked 2 jobs, saved every penny. I didn't miss a parent-teacher conference. I didn't buy myself new shoes for 5 years, so he could have cleats for soccer and lessons for trumpet. And when he met her, I welcomed her. I gave her the wedding dress my mother gave me. I offered her the master bedroom when they moved in during renovations. I handed her the password to the safe, because I believed family meant shared, not sacrificed. But now I was the scene to skip. You might think I'm exaggerating, that I'm reading into things, but it's not just this one night, it's the build-up. It's the way my favorite tea disappeared from the pantry, the way the framed photo of my husband and I vanished from the mantelpiece, the way the guest Wi-Fi password suddenly didn't work for me. You don't need a shouting match to know you're being pushed out. Sometimes, it's the absence that screams loudest. I remember the first time I noticed my seat had moved. Subtle, just one spot over. Not at the head of the table anymore. No big speech, no reason, just moved. That night, after the movie, I went to the kitchen to wash a cup and found a note on the fridge that said, "Milk almond, cheese plant-based, no more dairy in the house. I drink milk every morning, always have, for 73 years. But apparently, not anymore." The next morning, my granddaughter came to me privately. "Grandma," she said softly, "I didn't think it was right, what happened last night." I blinked at her, unsure what to say. "But Mum says, you don't like those kinds of movies anyway." I just stared at her. What kinds of movies? The ones where women my age still matter. What do you think is this how invisibility begins, not in shadows, but under bright lights, with people smiling and joking as if nothing's wrong? Comment your thoughts. Because I need to know, is this happening to just me? Or are there others out there being muted in their own homes? I started keeping track. Not journaling that felt too dramatic, but little notes, mental tallies, every time something I once touched went missing, every time my opinion wasn't asked, every time they planned something in the group chat but forgot to add me, every time my stories were interrupted with, "We already heard this one." Grandma. Every time the thermostat setting I changed was reset an hour later, 1,000 tiny erasures. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in bed and re-watched that same movie alone on my tablet. I paused it at the scene she skipped, the grandmother looking out a window, saying a woman becomes invisible not when she grows old, but when others stop looking at her. And I realized that's exactly what they were doing, skipping me. But what I didn't know was that my daughter-in-law was just getting started. It started the next morning. Small things, unspoken things. I walked into the kitchen and opened the cabinet for my favorite teacup, the blue and white porcelain one with a chip on the rim, the one I'd had since my wedding shower. It was gone. All the mugs were gone, actually. Replaced by an identical set of modern, handleless stoneware in muted beige. The shelves looked like they belonged in a catalogue, not a home. I turned around and saw my daughter-in-law pouring herself a smoothie, earbuds in, moving to music only she could hear. She didn't notice me. Or maybe she did and pretended not to. That afternoon, I tried to water the orchids on the porch, only to find them missing. I asked my son. He said, "Oh, I think Maya rehomed them. Something about them attracting ants." I stared at him. Those orchids had been with me through decades. My husband brought them home after our first trip to Maui. I'd tended them through storms and cold spells. They'd never attracted ants. They'd only ever attracted memories. Still, I said nothing. By the end of the week, the door to my bedroom, which had always creaked slightly when opened, suddenly didn't. I tested it. The hinges had been oiled. It now opened silently. That shouldn't have made me nervous. But it did. I wasn't imagining things. The house I helped pay for, helped build emotionally and financially, was shifting. Without me. The family calendar on the fridge, once covered in notes written in 3 different handwritings, was now updated only on their phones. I no longer knew when they had dentist appointments or who was picking up my granddaughter from piano. I found out about events only when someone walked out the door wearing heels. One morning, I came down in my robe and found a folded pile of my clothes on the kitchen table, confused. I picked them up. My bathrobe, 2 nightgowns, and a pair of slippers. There was a sticky note on top, extra linens closet in guest room. Guest room, I was confused. I lived in the master suite upstairs, down the hall from my granddaughter. I'd lived there since my son got married and invited me in during renovations. I walked back upstairs and found the door to my room wide open. Inside, new curtains, new paint, my books gone, my armchair gone, a large yoga mat unfurled in the center, two cameras on tripods, a ring light, a printed sign taped to the wall. Studio in progress, please do not enter. I stood there for a full minute, waiting for someone to come explain. No one did. I walked back downstairs, heart hammering in my chest, and asked Maya, my daughter-in-law, what happened. She didn't look up from her phone. "Oh," she said casually, "we figured it would be more efficient if you took the guest room. This way. I have the light in the mornings for recording. Hope that's okay. Hope that's okay." She said it like she was offering me a different seat on the bus, not evicting me from my own space. And my son. He looked at me and said, "It's temporary." "Mom, just while she's building her podcast audience, you're always welcome here." Welcome. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't visiting. This was my home. Or so I thought. That night, I lay awake on a twin bed in the guest room, the room that used to be the nursery. The walls were still faintly yellow. I could see where the alphabet stickers used to be, where I used to rock my granddaughter to sleep. Now it was where I was placed, tucked, set aside. Have you ever felt like you're becoming optional? Like your presence is accepted but not included? Tell me. Honestly, have you ever watched the rhythms of your home shift around you like a play that changed scripts without telling you? If you have, write in the comments. Maybe your story will give someone like me the courage to believe they're not going crazy, because I started doubting myself. I started thinking maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe this was just modernization, a new generation running things differently. But then came the medication mix-up. I have high blood pressure. I've been on the same meds for years. One morning, I opened the bathroom cabinet and found the bottle missing. In its place was a new container, same label. But the pills looked different, smaller, coated. I took them anyway. That night, my heart felt strange, not painful, just off, like it was skipping steps. I asked Maya where she got the refill. She looked up from her laptop and blinked. Oh. I called the pharmacy and transferred it to the online delivery program. Saves gas. I asked which pharmacy. She shrugged. Not sure. The one with the best reviews. No name. No verification. No paper trail. That night, I flushed the pills and called my old pharmacist the next day. They said they'd never refilled my prescription. Not in over a month. That's when I knew. This wasn't incompetence. It was erasure. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just systematic. What would you do in that situation? Would you say something? Would you confront them? Or would you wait, observe? Try to understand just how far they've already gone. Let me know in the comments. I'm still not sure what the right path is. And that evening, it became clear how deep the replacement went. We had dinner. Everyone was there. Maya had cooked quinoa salad, roasted squash, and something she called mushroom Wellington. All lovely, all vegan. I smiled and ate quietly. Mid-meal. She announced that they'd reorganized the family photo albums, digitized them, she said proudly. I asked where the originals were. She laughed. Oh, we shredded the physical ones. They were all crumbling anyway. I dropped my fork. Shredded decades of film, wedding photos, my son's first haircut, my late husband's smile. Gone. I excused myself and walked outside. My hands were shaking. The backyard was quiet. The same swing set still stood. but rust had taken over the chains, and it hit me I had become like that swing set, still standing, but unused, unmaintained, slowly deteriorating while no one noticed. I sat on the bench and stared at the garden I once planted, now covered in artificial turf, and I whispered to no one, "Am I being erased or replaced?" But I already knew the answer. I just didn't realize. I was one step away from being erased entirely. It was a Tuesday when I realized I hadn't spoken to my granddaughter in 4 days. She lived under the same roof. Her room was down the hall. And yet, 4 days. It wasn't that she was gone. I saw her, glimpsed her at breakfast, in the hallway, disappearing into Maya's car. But she didn't look at me, didn't stop, didn't speak. I told myself maybe she was busy, exams, extracurriculars, teenagers grow distant. It's normal. But it wasn't just her. My son, once the boy who called me every afternoon from college just to say hi, had started disappearing behind vague nods. Busy day. Mum. Long call. Can we talk later? I'll fill you in this weekend. That weekend never came. It was like a fog had settled between us. Not cold, just thick. Like I was looking at them through soundproof glass. They moved, laughed, lived, and I watched from behind the pane. The door to my old room, now Maya's studio, remained locked, always. The guest room, where I now slept, was right next to the laundry room. I could hear them talking, sometimes muffled conversations, bursts of laughter. But the voices never came toward me. Once, I tried to start a conversation during dinner. I mentioned an old family trip, the one where my son got stung by a jellyfish and Maya carried him bridal style up the beach. It had always been a funny memory. No one responded. Maya cleared her throat. My son glanced at his phone. My granddaughter said, "You've told that story before." "Grandma, it wasn't cruel. It was tired, dismissive, the way one might brush away a piece of lint." And I laughed, pretending I wasn't hurt. But inside, I felt myself folding inward. Gaslighting isn't always about making you doubt reality. Sometimes, it's about making you doubt your relevance. That week, I tried texting my book club, a group of women I'd known for years. Only 2 replied, both short, polite. "Can't this month, busy with grandkids." When I suggested coffee, the messages were left on read. I called Linda, my best friend since nursing school. She picked up on the 3rd try, said her daughter was staying over. "You know how it is, tight space," she said. I said I understood. But I didn't. I thought about the last time someone had invited me to anything. The last time I'd been asked for an opinion. The last time someone said, "We need you." It had been months. The strange part is, you don't notice it all at once. Isolation is clever. It doesn't slam doors. It just lets them slowly close. I stopped going to the store with them. I told myself it was because I walked slower. I stopped suggesting meals. I told myself they had different tastes. I stopped turning on the radio in the kitchen. I told myself silence was better. But late at night, I would catch myself humming the same old tune I used to sing when I was young, when I believed I'd grow into an elder everyone listened to, admired, respected. Instead, I was fading. And what's worse, I started believing maybe it was deserved. Maybe I was forgetful. Maybe I did repeat myself. Maybe I was becoming a burden. Have you ever felt like that? Like you're being replaced? Not by someone, but by the idea that you're no longer needed? Tell me honestly if you've experienced something like this. Write it in the comments, because these feelings, if left unspoken, will convince you you're the only one feeling them. And I don't believe I'm alone. One afternoon, I came home early from a walk. My legs had been sore. I needed to sit. The front door was ajar. Strange. I stepped in. The house was quiet. Then laughter. I followed the sound to the living room. The three of them, my son, Maya, and my granddaughter, were sitting on the floor, playing a board game. Popcorn, juice, open photo books around them. Mine wasn't there. I watched from the hallway. No one saw me. My granddaughter rolled the dice. Maya high-fived her. My son said something funny, and they laughed. It wasn't malicious. It was ordinary. A family moment. Without me. And it stung worse than words ever could. I backed away quietly. Went upstairs. Closed the guest room door. And sat on the bed. Hands in my lap. Wondering how long before even this space stopped feeling like mine. The next day, I asked my son if he wanted to walk with me. We used to do that on Sundays. A short walk. Just to the park. He said, "Sorry, Mum. Sunday's our recording day. You know Maya's podcast is gaining traction." I nodded. Said nothing. 2 weeks later, I heard a strange noise in the backyard. When I looked out, I saw Maya with a handyman. They were dismantling the bench I'd built with my husband 20 years ago. The one where we had our last anniversary lunch before he passed. The one where my son proposed. I ran outside, breath short. "What's going on?" Maya turned, smiled. "Oh, we're updating the backyard. Outdoor fire pit. Minimalist seating, modern vibes. But that's our bench." She tilted her head. It was weathered. "We didn't think you'd mind. Didn't think I'd mind." I stood there, watching it loaded into the back of a truck like trash. And I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because by then, I wasn't sure anyone would hear me. I went back inside, sat in the laundry room. Not even in my room. Just on the cold floor, between baskets. And I cried. Not loudly. Just a slow, silent stream. It wasn't the bench. It wasn't the tea mug. It wasn't the calendar or the pills or the nickname or the photos. It was all of it. All together. I was being cut out not cruelly, but cleanly. Like trimming dead branches. But I wasn't dead. I was right here. Breathing. Watching. And something inside me shifted. A whisper. A seed of resistance. Because that night, I overheard something. Something I wasn't supposed to hear. And it changed everything. I couldn't sleep that night. Not after what I'd overheard. It was late. The house was still. I'd gone downstairs for a glass of water, barefoot, careful not to wake anyone. As I passed the living room, I heard whispers, my son and Maya. The light from a laptop screen flickered across the wall. "She's becoming unpredictable," Maya said. My son replied, quieter. "She's not hurting anyone. Just lost." Maya's voice sharpened. "We need to make a decision soon. Before someone else does." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Before someone else does, I crept back up the stairs. Heart pounding. What decision? What were they planning the next morning? Maya handed me a smoothie. "Try this. Blueberry avocado. Great for brain health." I took it with a shaking hand. "Thanks." She smiled. "We've scheduled you a little checkup next week. Nothing serious. Just a cognitive screening." My stomach flipped. "I didn't ask for that." She shrugged. "It's free through our insurance. Routine. And honestly, we just want peace of mind." Peace of mind. For whom? That afternoon, I sat on the porch pretending to read. I was watching how my world had turned into a set one I no longer belonged to. 3 days later, we arrived at the clinic. A small beige room, artificial plants, soft music. The doctor was polite, efficient. He asked me questions: memory recall, word association, shape recognition. I answered them all. But then he asked something strange. "Do you know what state you're in right now, California?" I replied. He smiled. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He tapped the paper. "Your daughter-in-law said you've had moments of confusion. I haven't." His eyes didn't meet mine. "Well, that's what we're here to assess." When I returned to the lobby, Maya stood, scrolling through her phone. She didn't ask how it went. Later that week, I received a letter in the mail. It was addressed to me, but the return address was from a facility I didn't recognize. Inside was a printed brochure, Sunvale, a gentle retirement experience. And underneath, your family has requested an information packet on your behalf. I felt something break inside me. I wasn't being pushed out anymore. I was being prepared for disposal. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching the brochure like a ticking bomb. Hours passed. That evening, while dusting the hallway, I saw a new voice assistant device plugged into the wall, one of those smart speakers that listens. I never remembered anyone buying it. I unplugged it. The next morning, it was plugged in again. That afternoon, a stranger rang the doorbell. A young woman, mid-20s, holding a clipboard and wearing hospital scrubs. "Hi," she said. "I'm here for the wellness consult." I blinked. For who? She checked her form. "Margaret Whitfield." "That's me." "Oh, Maya said you'd be expecting me." I stared at her. I wasn't. She shifted awkwardly. "I can come back." "No. Wait. Are you with Sunvale?" She paused. I shouldn't say, ma'am." I stepped closer. "Please." Her eyes softened. "Off the record, they flagged you as preliminary relocation approved. That usually means your family initiated the process. But you seem very lucid to me." My hands trembled. She looked around nervously. "Don't tell them I said anything." And then she left. I stood frozen in the doorway for what felt like an hour. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my former co-worker from the hospital, Denise. She was a nurse, now retired. One of the few people who'd always told me the truth. I told her everything. She went quiet, then said, "You need to start documenting everything. Dates, names, conversations." "Why?" "Because if they're trying to establish incompetence even subtly, they're laying legal groundwork." Legal groundwork. I thought of my accounts, my will, my name on the deed. That evening, while folding laundry, I found one of my old journals tucked in the closet. I opened it, page after page of memories. That night, I began a new section, day 1. They tried to change my medication. Day 2. My son used the word unpredictable. Day 3. A stranger came to assess me uninvited. I kept going. The next morning, I woke early and checked the trash. Buried beneath banana peels and paper towels, I found 3 envelopes addressed to me opened, then resealed. I recognized my own writing. I pulled them out, cleaned them off, and placed them in a shoebox. Then I went into the garage, unlocked an old cabinet, and placed the box inside. From that day on, I kept notes, voicemails, emails, anything, because now I knew I was being erased on paper, too, and then a twist I didn't expect. 3 days later, I was sitting at the community center after my Tai Chi class. I was alone in the lounge, sipping weak coffee. A young woman approached me. Mrs. Whitfield. Yes, I'm Naomi. I think you knew my mother, Lisa, the nurse from Westview Hospice. Yes, of course. Liza was a dear friend. Naomi smiled. She used to talk about you. Said you were always sharp as a tack. I'm in social work now. That's wonderful. Naomi hesitated. May I ask, are you okay? You look worried. Something in her tone made me pause. I'm fine, I said. Just tired. She reached into her bag. I don't mean to intrude, but I overheard something strange at a case intake meeting last week. The name Margaret Whitfield came up. There was a note that caught my eye, family pursuing step-down pathway. That term's usually used when a guardianship transfer is being quietly initiated. I blinked. You mean, they want control of my decisions? She nodded slowly. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but something felt wrong. Your name was flagged, but no medical red flags attached. I sat there, numb. Naomi placed a card in my hand. If you need help, call me. We have advocates. This isn't over. And she walked away. I stared at her card. For the first time in months, I didn't feel crazy. I felt seen. You know, it's funny people think a turning point is dramatic, a confrontation, a breakdown. But sometimes it's a stranger handing you a card with her mother's eyes. Tell me if someone handed you a thread of truth in a world of silence. Would you pull it? Would you risk the unraveling? Tell me in the comments, because I just pulled mine. And from that moment forward, I wasn't afraid anymore. I started watching back. It began with a paperclip, a simple silver paperclip bent slightly, resting on the edge of the kitchen counter. Harmless? Ordinary. Except I hadn't used paperclips in years, and I hadn't printed anything since I moved into the guest room. Something told me to look deeper. That afternoon, when everyone was out for groceries, I walked into Maya's studio. Quiet. The door was unlocked. Unusually. Probably an oversight. Or perhaps arrogance. Inside, the space was immaculate. White walls, foam-padded sound panels, 2 ring lights, a microphone the size of a soda can, everything sterile, polished, intentional, except for a drawer slightly ajar. Inside, a stack of manila folders, clearly labelled podcast scripts, sponsorship contracts, and then my name. A folder marked Margaret Whitfield, notes. My hands trembled. I pulled it out. Inside were printed emails, highlighted passages, a few of my handwritten notes photocopied. How did she get those? And then one document that made my breath freeze. Request to initiate adult guardianship evaluation preliminary form, not yet filed. Filed on her laptop, dated 3 weeks ago. Signed Maya Whitfield, family representative. Representative. I sat down, folder in my lap, heartbeat deafening in my ears. Next to the folder was a small USB drive, taped to a post-it note podcast backup. Do not delete. I pocketed it. I returned everything else as it was, even the paperclip. That night, in the silence of my room, I plugged the USB into my old laptop, the one no one remembered I had. The folder contained audio files, edited, clean. But one folder was mislabeled, likely copied by accident. It was raw. I clicked play. Maya's voice. She's sweet, but fading. You know how some people just disappear before they're gone? That's her. A pause. My son. You think she'll fight it? Maya, no. She doesn't have it in her. Besides, the more she doubts herself, the easier it'll be. Another clip. Maya. We'll move her into assisted care, handle the finances, and finally no more interruptions on set. Interruptions, I stopped breathing. I sat frozen in my chair for over an hour. Then I called Naomi. She answered on the first ring. I have recordings. I whispered. Back them up? She said immediately, multiple locations, print transcripts, and Margaret, don't tell anyone yet. Let them think you're still quiet. The next day, I bought a burner flash drive and copied everything. I also visited the library, printed the documents, and mailed a set to Denise, my nurse friend. I labeled the envelope, if anything happens to me. Read this. When I returned home, Maya greeted me in the kitchen. Out for a stroll, library, I said casually. She said, eyeing the bag in my hand. No further questions? She didn't know. Not yet. That evening, I began a physical journal. I copied quotes from the audio files, time-stamped them. I added copies of the documents I'd taken pictures of. June 8th, overheard phrase, guardianship paperwork. June 9th, found folder with my name. June 10th, USB with incriminating recordings. And I wrote something at the bottom of the page. If this were happening to someone else, I would tell them to run. But this is my house, my family. I'm not running. The following week, I made an appointment with an attorney, quietly. A woman named Claire Hoyt. I told her everything. She listened carefully. Then she said, what you're describing is not just morally disturbing, it could be legally categorized as coercive control, especially if it's tied to estate manipulation. I asked, is it enough? She looked me straight in the eye. It's enough to start. She gave me a checklist: secure copies, verify legal ownership of property, freeze financial access, and if possible, catch one more direct admission. I nodded. Then I asked her something that had haunted me. What if they move faster than me? She paused. Then you have to be ready, not just with evidence, but with allies. That night, I called my granddaughter. She didn't answer. But an hour later, I received a text. Everything okay? Grandma? It wasn't much, but it was a crack in the wall. I replied, yes, but I might need your help soon. I can't explain yet. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. The next morning, Maya was different. She hovered more, checked in more often, smiled too widely. Something had shifted. I checked the studio drawer. The folder was gone. So was the USB. But I had backups now. Later that day, I found a forgotten note on the counter. Mom, just so you know, we've been talking to a family therapist. Might be good for all of us to go just to clear the air. It sounded benign, but I knew better. It was step 2 of the same strategy: destabilize, diagnose, replace. But this time, I had a file of my own. Let me ask you, if you had proof that someone was trying to quietly erase your name from your family's future, would you confront them immediately, or wait until the stage was yours? Tell me in the comments, what would you do if it were your daughter-in-law, your son? Because I thought I had time. I thought I was ahead. But I hadn't counted on how quickly she'd move. Because 2 days later, she deleted the phone number of my lawyer from the family contact sheet. And that was just the beginning. I never hated her. Not at first. In fact, when I met Margaret, my mother-in-law, I thought she was graceful, sharp, put together in that old-school way, the kind of woman who wore perfume even at home and folded towels like origami. And in the beginning, she liked me. I could tell. She brought me lemon cake, gave me my husband's baby pictures, laughed at my awkward jokes. I remember thinking, this might work. This might actually feel like a family. But then came the kitchen drawer. I was unpacking after we moved in, trying to make room for our things. And I opened the middle drawer by the stove. Every item was labelled in her handwriting: measuring spoons, spatulas, tea strainers. I reached to move the strainer, and I hesitated, because I could hear her voice not angry, just present, always present, as if she were still curating every corner of the house, even the ones I stood in now. It sounds silly, I know. A tea strainer. But it wasn't the strainer, it was the invisible line. You may live here, but you will never belong here. People say I'm cruel, but no one asks where cruelty comes from. I grew up in a house where nothing was mine. My mother used to rearrange my room every week, said it kept energy flowing. But it also meant I couldn't form roots. I learned not to trust permanence. She told me emotions were weakness, tears were manipulation. When I cried, she laughed. When I succeeded, she said, "Don't get comfortable. You're not special." So I learned to adapt, to adjust, to replace emotion with strategy, to take up space without asking. When I married Matthew, I thought it would be different. He loved me for being efficient, thoughtful, always in control. But the truth, he still turned to her first. When the plumbing broke, when our daughter had a fever, when he didn't know what to say to me, it was always, "Let me ask Mom." It grated. Every time I tried to step forward as a wife, as a mother, as a woman, I felt her shadow beside me. Taller, calmer, wiser, worse, effortless. Do you know what that does to a woman like me? Someone who had to build herself from scraps. It makes you desperate. At first, I tried the polite route. I asked her advice. I complimented her roast. I played along with the photo albums and long stories. But over time, I saw the subtle ways she held control. Her voice always just a little louder at dinner. Her suggestions always the final say. My daughter worshipped her. My husband deferred. And me, I was Maya. Not Mommy, not Mrs. Whitfield. Just Maya, always one layer outside. I began to see my future. I would raise this family, care for this home, grow old in these walls, and never truly own any of it. And something inside me snapped. So I started taking things back, inch by inch. It began with the pantry. I replaced her teas. Quietly. Then the bookshelf. I moved her favorites into storage. I made it seamless, undetectable. I called it resetting energy. And you know what? No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. That's when I knew she was vulnerable. But here's the thing, I didn't want to destroy her. I just wanted room. Room to build my identity, my brand, my home. But Margaret, she didn't yield. Even in silence, she occupied space. She made our daughter question me, my decisions, my tone. She still brought up old rules, old recipes, old ways of doing things. And I thought, why should I live as an extra in my own story? So, yes, I began crafting a plan, calculated, quiet, strategic. I knew I couldn't ask Matthew to choose. He wouldn't. So I created a version of Margaret he'd have to pull away from himself. Forgetful, fragile, irrelevant. I filmed small moments, when she repeated herself, when she misplaced items, when she stared too long at nothing. I edited carefully, not lies, just emphasis. I consulted experts, framed it as concern. I whispered worries, planted seeds. I built a file, not of evidence, but of suggestion, and it worked. Matthew began pausing, asking, did Mom take her meds, watching her more closely. I was creating doubt, and it bloomed beautifully. Now, here's the part where I know you'll judge me. But before you do, ask yourself, if the only way to breathe in your own home was to slowly shift someone else out of it, would you do it? Especially if that person was always there. First louder, wiser, more beloved than you. Don't answer for the person you want to be. Answer as the version of yourself who's felt erased, outnumbered, unseen. Drop your truth in the comments. I want to hear from those who've lived it, not just judged it. That night, movie night, when I paused the film and said, let's skip the grandma scenes. It wasn't spontaneous. It was a test, to see how far I'd come, to see if the room would side with me. And they did. No one stopped me. No one said her name, not even Margaret. That's when I knew. I had them. But lately, something's shifted. She's watching me again, moving differently. Her eyes aren't confused anymore. They're focused. And that worries me. Because I know that look. It's the same one I saw in the mirror the first time I decided I wasn't going to be the quiet one anymore. I need to move faster. I've come too far. I've built a brand, a family, a space, and I won't lose it now. Because I'm not done. Not yet. I will finish this before she even realizes how close I already am. The letter arrived on a Thursday. No return address. Just my name handwritten, carefully on the front of a pale blue envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single photograph, printed on glossy paper, slightly grainy, taken from an angle near our front gate. It showed Maya, my daughter-in-law, standing with a man I didn't recognize. Her hands were gesturing. His were holding a clipboard. Their faces were serious. On the back of the photo, one line. You should know who's been coming around when you're not home. No signature, no explanation. I stared at the image for a long time. Then I flipped through my mental calendar. That was the same week Maya insisted I go stay with my friend Denise for 2 nights, said the house was being fumigated. I remembered thinking it was an odd suggestion. There had been no smell, no signs of pests. Now I knew why. She hadn't cleared the house. She'd cleared me. Later that day, I sat by the window, thinking, watching the garden, wondering who sent it. And then I saw her, across the street, sitting on her porch with a cup of tea. Mrs. Layton, our neighbour, widow, retired school librarian, always polite, rarely chatty, the kind of neighbour who waved but never lingered. But in that moment, something about her posture was different. She raised her teacup at me, then pointed subtly toward my mailbox. I stood, crossed the lawn, heart thudding. She smiled as I approached. Afternoon, Margaret. Hello, Mrs. Layton. Call me Elaine. We've lived across from each other for 12 years, feels overdue. I sat beside her. The sun was gentle, the breeze calm. I think you sent the photo, I said quietly. She didn't answer right away. Just sipped her tea. Then he came twice. The man with the clipboard. Once while you were out with your friend. Another time when Maya said you'd gone on retreat. She told him you were transitioning into the next phase of care. I felt the blood drain from my face. Elaine continued, I know what that language means. I've seen enough elder law seminars to know the euphemisms. So I took a picture. Why she looked at me, really looked. Because I lost my sister to something similar. Her son's wife moved her into a facility she didn't need, told everyone she had early dementia, took control of everything: the house, the finances. My sister wrote me letters, said she felt erased, but no one listened. By the time they realized, it was too late. I was silent. I see the same pattern here. Margaret. Quiet erasure. Control masked as concern. And you sitting smaller in your own space each day. I whispered. You're the first person who said that out loud. She nodded. Because most people don't want to get involved. But I do. She reached down and handed me a small envelope. Inside's a USB. I installed a front yard camera months ago. Not for you. For porch pirates. But I reviewed the footage. You'll want to see June 3rd. 4:16 p.m. I took it with both hands, like a lifeline. I can't thank you enough. You don't need to. Just don't let them take you without a voice. That night, I watched the video. Elaine was right. It wasn't just Maya and the man with the clipboard. It was a second visitor, a woman, dressed in clinical clothes, holding a folder with the logo of Sunvale Assisted Transitions. They had walked through the front gate, toured the yard, the porch, peeked into the windows. I paused the frame. Maya was smiling, proud, relaxed, like someone preparing to move into a space, not out of it. I called Claire, my lawyer, the next morning. I have a witness, I said. She listened, then told me what I didn't expect. This changes everything. A neutral third party makes your case real. It's not just your word, now it's a civilian observer. And recorded evidence. She asked for the video. I sent it. Then I asked her, what's the next step? Her answer was sharp. We don't confront. We document. And when the moment comes, we make it public. Very public. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something crack open inside me. Not rage, not fear, but strategy. I printed the photo Elaine had sent, made 3 copies, mailed one to Denise, another to Naomi. I kept one for myself on my dresser, not as a threat, but as a reminder I was not alone. Tell me this: have you ever been saved by someone who had no reason to care? A neighbor, a stranger, a classmate, someone who saw what no one else did and chose to act? If you have, tell your story in the comments. Because people like Elaine need to know they make a difference. Sometimes the loudest heroes are the ones who don't raise their voices at all. And now I had her on my side. And Claire. And Denise. And Naomi. And maybe my granddaughter. One by one. The circle was shifting. I wasn't invisible anymore. But Maya didn't know that. Yet. Because from where she stood, she still thought I was the woman who could be skipped over. But what she didn't realize was that I was building my scene, and it was almost time to press play. It happened on a Sunday, a warm, cloudless afternoon, the kind of day that pretends nothing could ever go wrong. Maya had planned a small family lunch. Just us, she said brightly. You know, some togetherness. She arranged the seating. 3 at the main table, my son, and our granddaughter. 1 chair at the end for me. I didn't mind, because this time I came prepared. I wore my late husband's watch, fixed my hair, put on lipstick. Not for vanity, for clarity. I wanted to be seen. Elaine had agreed to walk over at 1 p.m. exactly, holding the envelope. Claire, my lawyer, would be on standby by phone. Naomi had helped prepare the summary packet. The documents were neatly organized inside my bag. USB drive, transcripts, photos, witness statement, everything. We sat. We ate. The food was lovely, as always. Maya complimented herself often. Quinoa can be tricky, but I think I've perfected it. My son nodded absently. My granddaughter scrolled her phone under the table. Then, at 1:02 p.m., the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said. Maya stood too. "I can," but I was already moving. Elaine smiled when I opened the door. Her eyes flicked past me, taking in the room. She handed me the envelope, gave my hand a gentle squeeze, and turned to leave. Everyone was watching. "What's that?" Maya asked. I walked back to the table. Calm, quiet. "A delivery," I said, placing the envelope next to my plate. She laughed. "Forced. You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "Not yet. But I will be." I reached into my bag and took out the file, placed it on the table. "What's this?" my son asked. "Truth," I said simply. He frowned. "What are you talking about?" I turned to him first. "My son, you once asked me if I remembered what state I was in. You doubted if I was lucid. Do you remember that?" His eyes dropped. Maya said I nodded. "I know." Then I pulled out the first transcript, the one from the raw audio on Maya's USB. I began reading aloud. "Maya, she's sweet, but fading. You know how some people just disappear before they're gone? That's her. Matthew. You think she'll fight it, nee? Maya, no. She doesn't have it in her." My son's face turned pale. "I never said that," Maya said flatly. I looked her straight in the eye. "No. You just recorded it, and then forgot to delete the backup." I placed the USB on the table. "This contains over 8 minutes of recordings, some with your voice, some with his, all detailing your plans to remove me from this home, assume legal guardianship, and transfer property rights." She looked around. "No one will believe you. Anyone can fake a transcript." I smiled. "True. That's why I've also included front yard surveillance footage from our neighbor Elaine. She saw the two of you meet with transition consultants. She sent me this photo." I held it up. Maya reached for her water glass. I continued. "These documents," I said, placing another stack on the table, "include an unsigned guardianship application, printouts of emails, a list of prescriptions that were changed without my consent, a flyer from Sunvale mailed directly to me, but never requested by me." "You're making a scene," Maya whispered. "No," I said. "I'm reclaiming one." The room was silent. My granddaughter looked from face to face. "Mom, is that true?" Maya didn't answer. My son stood. "Maya, did you really try to take guardianship of my mother?" Maya stood too. I was trying to protect us. She was slipping. "No," I said gently. "You were erasing, and now we are here." I slid a copy of the file across the table to my granddaughter. "Someday, you'll read this, and I hope it helps you understand the difference between care and control." Then I looked at my son. "I loved you so much, I let myself become small in your home. But I will not disappear quietly." He looked down. My granddaughter leaned forward, whispering, "I didn't know. I'm sorry." I nodded. "You weren't meant to know." For a long moment, no one said anything, just the sound of birds outside. And then Maya picked up the USB and hurled it at the wall. It cracked. Pieces scattered. "That's your proof," she hissed. A plastic stick and a nosy neighbor. I met her eyes. "No. My proof is what happens next when this goes legal." I stood, shoulders back. "My lawyer will be in touch." Then I walked out. Not rushed, not in anger, but with the slow grace of someone reclaiming her reflection. Let me ask you something. If you were sitting at that table, watching a mother reclaim her truth, her name, her place, would you stand with her? Or would you stay silent? Tell me in the comments whose side would you choose. Don't just say it, mean it, because Maya thought the worst was over. But the truth, the final blow hadn't landed yet. 2 days after the showdown, I walked into the law office of Claire Hoyt, clutching a manila folder in one hand and my dignity in the other. Her office was quiet, clean. A wall of legal books to the left, sunlight filtering through drawn blinds. She gestured for me to sit. I saw the footage, she said. I nodded. So did they. Claire opened a folder of her own. I filed a preliminary injunction with the court this morning, she said, her voice calm but firm. Under the California Elder Abuse and Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act, we're seeking a protective order based on your documentation, recorded admissions, and witness statements. We can argue attempted undue influence, coercion, and psychological manipulation. I exhaled, slow and steady. I don't want to destroy them, I said softly, but I need to stop this. Claire nodded. And we will. Legally, emotionally, financially, you have ground to stand on. Then she leaned forward and said the line I would never forget, Margaret. Silence is what they count on, but your voice has become admissible. That afternoon, she filed an elder abuse restraining order emergency protective in Los Angeles County, California. The petition included audio recordings from Maya's private conversations, video evidence from Elaine's front yard camera, medical interference medication, change without consent, a list of financial manipulations, unauthorized document access, hidden guardianship petition, witness declarations from Elaine, Naomi, and Denise. It was more than enough. The court responded within 48 hours. A hearing was scheduled for the following week, and until then, Maya was legally prohibited from managing, modifying, or accessing any property, medical file, or legal record in my name. When I told my son, he was silent for a long time. Then you're serious? Yes, I said, and I wish I didn't have to be. The day of the hearing, Claire stood beside me in the courtroom. Maya sat across the aisle, her hair perfect, her expression cold. My son next to her, visibly shaken. My granddaughter was absent by choice, I think. The judge, a woman in her 60s, reviewed the binder for 20 minutes before looking up. I've seen guardianship abuse cases, she said, but rarely this calculated. Maya stood. Your Honor. I was acting out of concern. Margaret was forgetting things. She left the oven on. She, Claire, rose. With respect, Your Honor. We have video evidence that those statements are false. We also have this. She handed the judge a document, the unsigned guardianship petition. And this, she added, pressing play on the audio. The courtroom listened as Maya's voice filled the room. We'll move her into assisted care, handle the finances, and finally no more interruptions on set. Silence followed. Claire delivered the final blow. Your Honor, this isn't just elder neglect. This is a clear attempt to systematically erase a competent adult's autonomy for personal gain, social, financial, and psychological. The judge turned to Maya. You may be used to speaking to an audience, she said slowly. But in this courtroom, facts speak louder than tone, and the facts speak for Margaret. Order granted, guardianship blocked. All financial control reverted to me. Maya's access to shared property, suspended pending review. But more than that, something else was restored that day. My name, my credibility, my place. After the hearing, Maya brushed past me in the hallway. "This isn't over," she muttered. I looked at her, not unkindly. "It is for me," I said, "because I'm no longer afraid of your story. I've written mine. Let me ask you, do you think this judgment was enough? Would you have forgiven her? Or is legal justice still just the beginning? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let others weigh in. What would you do if someone tried to rewrite your life with paperwork? As for me, I didn't celebrate. I went home, made a cup of chamomile, and sat in the garden. The swing still creaked. The orchids had begun blooming again. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But before I could fully embrace that, I needed to take one last step. Not for punishment, not for spectacle, but for truth. Because I wasn't done reclaiming what I'd lost. I didn't celebrate with fireworks. I didn't make speeches. I didn't throw a victory dinner. Instead, I bought a lemon tree. It was small, crooked, a little wilted on one side. But I liked that. It reminded me of me. I planted it in the backyard, the space Maya once tried to redesign into a minimalist lounge. Now it was mine again. Not restored, but reclaimed. The soil still remembered me. So did the house. The week after the hearing, things were quiet. My son didn't say much. My granddaughter lingered longer in my room than usual. Maya disappeared into long podcast recordings, but this time, the studio door stayed closed for good. Then, one afternoon, my granddaughter knocked on my door. "I found this in the attic," she said, holding a stack of old VHS tapes. I smiled. "Those are home videos." She sat on the floor with a portable player, legs crossed like a child again. We watched together. There was my son, toothless, beaming. Maya, younger, nervous at the wedding. My husband waving behind the camera. And me, laughing, dancing, teaching my boy to tie his shoes. My granddaughter leaned into me. "I didn't know you were this fun." I kissed her forehead. I was. 2 days later, I did something no one expected. I hosted a tea party. Real china, real tablecloths, garden chairs, little cards with names written in cursive. Elaine came. Denise, Naomi, Claire. A few other women from the community centre. Women who had been made invisible and chose to return to view. We laughed. We told stories. And I stood up and said something I never thought I'd say out loud. "Thank you for witnessing me." I think that's the greatest form of love we can offer one another. A week after that, I was invited to speak at a local book club. Topic: inheritance of voice reclaiming identity after family conflict. I said yes, because what I'd found wasn't just my seat at the table. It was my narrative. And this time, I didn't need anyone's permission to tell it. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen someone go from erased to unshakable, from forgotten to unforgettable? If you have, share their story in the comments. We need those stories to remember that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rebuilds. Quietly, fully, beautifully. And if you're that person, if you're still in the middle of your erasing, hold on. This story's proof that the second act is always waiting, and it can be glorious. As for me, I didn't skip a single scene, and I never will again, because I am not background. I am not silence. I am not past tense. I am present. I am voice. I am still here. And if you want more stories like this, true, Painful, powerful. Don't forget to subscribe. There's more where this came from.